There is a woman out there right now. Maybe she's sitting across from a man at dinner. Maybe she's texting someone she really likes. Maybe she's lying in bed wondering why every relationship she enters seems to follow the same exhausting pattern. And this woman is smart. She is accomplished. She has survived things that would have broken most people. She has raised children, built careers, navigated heartbreak, and come out the other side still standing. And yet, something is missing. The connection she craves feels just out of reach. The man she wants seems drawn to her, then slowly, quietly, he pulls away. And she cannot figure out why. Here is what nobody is telling her. Here is what the dating coaches dancing on social media are too afraid to say out loud. The problem is not her age. The problem is not her looks. The problem is not that good men don't exist. The problem is something far more specific, far more fixable, and far more fascinating than any of that. There are 10 things, just 10, that men find deeply, almost irresistibly attractive in a woman. 10 things that trigger something ancient and emotional inside of a man. Things that make him lean in instead of pull away. Things that make him think about her when she's not in the room. Things that make him want to stay. And here is the part that will shock you. These 10 things have almost nothing to do with physical appearance. They have nothing to do with youth. In fact, older women, women with experience, depth, and wisdom, are in the perfect position to master every single one of them. And yet, research, psychology, and real-world experience show us that only about 1% of older women are actually doing these things consistently. Only 1%. That means 99 out of every 100 women are leaving enormous amounts of attraction, connection, and love completely on the table. Not because they can't do better, but because nobody ever told them what better actually looks like. Today, that changes. Stay with me until the very end of this video, because every single one of these 10 things builds on the last. And if you miss even one, you might miss the exact piece of the puzzle you've been searching for your entire life. This is the Heart Code, and we are about to crack something open. Welcome to the Heart Code, the channel dedicated to helping women like you understand the psychology of love, attraction, and deep human connection. If you are new here, I am so glad you found us, and I want to tell you right now that this is a safe space. This is a space where we don't sugarcoat things, we don't shame women for wanting love, and we don't pretend that relationships are simple, because they're not. They are layered, they are emotional, they are psychological, and they are worth understanding deeply. That is exactly what we do here every single day. Now, before we go any further, I want to ask you something sincerely. If you have not yet subscribed to the Heart Code, please do it right now. Tap that subscribe button, ring that notification bell, because we upload content here specifically designed for women who are done playing small in love. Women who want real answers based in psychology, not just feel-good advice that sounds nice, but changes nothing. We are building something real here, and I want you to be a part of it. And if this video speaks to you, if at any point you feel like someone finally said what you needed to hear, please like this video. It takes 1 second, and it tells us that this kind of content matters to you. Share this video with a friend, a sister, a woman in your life who is navigating love and deserves to know these things. And if you really want to support the work we do here at the Heart Code, you can show your support through Super Thanks. That little button right below this video. Every single contribution helps us keep creating content like this, and it means more than you know. All right, let us get into it. 10 things men love, but only 1% of older women actually do. Let's go. But thing number 1, she knows who she is and she doesn't apologize for it. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine 2 women. Both are in their late 50s, both are attractive, both are intelligent, both have full lives. The first woman walks into a room and immediately begins scanning it, looking for cues, looking for approval, adjusting herself based on what she senses people want from her. She laughs a little too quickly at jokes she doesn't find funny. She softens her opinions when she senses disagreement. She changes the subject when she feels like her real thoughts might make someone uncomfortable. She is pleasant. She is agreeable. She is completely exhausting to be in a relationship with, not because she's a bad person, but because there is no stable ground beneath her. A man trying to connect with her is trying to hold on to water. Every time he reaches for her, she shifts. Now imagine the second woman. She walks into the same room and something is different immediately. She doesn't scan for approval. She doesn't perform. She laughs when something is actually funny, and she is perfectly comfortable with a moment of silence when it isn't. When someone asks her opinion, she gives it clearly, warmly, without excessive qualification. She knows what she likes, what she values, what she will and will not accept. She has a point of view on the world that was formed through decades of living, learning, and sometimes getting it terribly wrong, and learning from that too. And when a man meets her, he feels something he doesn't feel very often. He feels like he is meeting someone real. This is identity stability. And it is one of the most powerful forces of attraction that exists, not just for men, but in every human relationship. We are wired psychologically to be drawn to people who have a stable sense of self. The psychological term for this is self-concept clarity. And research consistently shows that people with high self-concept clarity are perceived as more attractive, more trustworthy, and more emotionally safe to be close to. And here is the beautiful truth. Self-concept clarity increases with age. The older you get, the more opportunity you have had to know yourself. And yet, most older women have been so conditioned to shape themselves around others, around their children, their partners, their jobs, their families, that they have actually lost touch with who they are as a standalone person. A man, especially a mature, emotionally aware man, can feel the difference immediately. He can feel when a woman knows herself versus when she is performing a version of herself she thinks he will like. And nothing is more attractive than a woman who is completely, comfortably, unapologetically herself. Not harsh, not aggressive, not closed, just grounded, just real, just utterly, beautifully secure in her own identity. So here is the question I want you to sit with. Who are you when no one is watching? What do you actually think, believe, value, and want? Not what you've been told to want. Not what seems acceptable for a woman your age, not what your last partner preferred, but what you, in the quiet truth of your own heart, actually desire. Because the women who can answer that question clearly and then live that answer out loud are the 1%, and men can feel them from across the room. Thing number 2, she is genuinely present in conversation. We live in an era of distraction. And I don't just mean phones, though phones are certainly part of it. I mean that most people, most of the time, are not fully present in any conversation they are having. They are half listening while simultaneously planning what they are going to say next. They are nodding along while internally rehearsing their response. They are physically in the room, but mentally 3 conversations ahead, or 3 days ahead, or 3 years ahead, worrying about something that hasn't happened yet, or replaying something that already has. And men feel this, even men who can't articulate it, who couldn't explain it in psychological terms if you asked them. They feel it in their body when a woman is not truly present with them. There is a flatness to the interaction. There is a sense of talking into a void, and there is a corresponding aliveness, an almost electric quality. When a woman is genuinely, completely present and listening, real presence is rare, and because it is rare, it is extraordinarily powerful. When a woman looks at a man, Not at her phone, not past him, not through him, but actually at him, with full attention, with genuine curiosity about what he is saying. Something happens neurologically. His nervous system registers that he is being truly seen, and being truly seen is one of the deepest human needs there is. It is something most people walk through their entire lives without experiencing consistently, and when they encounter it, they are drawn to it the way plants are drawn to sunlight. Now here is what makes this particularly interesting in the context of older women and mature relationships. Many women in their 40s, 50s, and beyond have spent decades in relationships where they did all the emotional heavy lifting. They listened endlessly, they held space endlessly, they gave endlessly, and they were rarely, if ever, truly listened to in return. And as a result, many of these women have developed a kind of protective emotional distance, a habit of partial engagement. They've learned through repeated experience that full presence often leads to hurt, so they protect themselves by staying half in and half out of every interaction. This is completely understandable. And it is also something that keeps them from experiencing the very connection they are longing for, because presence is a two-way door. When you are fully present with someone, you invite them to be fully present with you, and in that shared presence, something extraordinary becomes possible. Real intimacy, real understanding, real connection that goes beyond the surface. The 1% of women who have mastered this are not women who are naively open, endlessly available, or emotionally unguarded. They are women who have chosen consciously and deliberately to be present while also being discerning about who earns that presence. They give their full attention and they give it selectively, and that combination, full presence plus discernment, is one of the most magnetic qualities a woman can possess. So thing number 3, she has a life she loves that doesn't revolve around him. This one makes some women uncomfortable, so I want you to stay with me and really hear it fully before you react. One of the most counterintuitive truths in relationship psychology is this: the less a woman needs a man to complete her life, the more attractive she is to him. Not because men want to be irrelevant, not because men are drawn to women who don't care about them, but because a woman who has a full, rich, meaningful life of her own brings something to a relationship that a woman who is waiting for a relationship to give her life meaning simply cannot. Think about it from a man's perspective for a moment. Imagine meeting a woman who, before you came along, had her friendships, her passions, her work, her creative outlets, her spiritual practice, her sense of adventure, her community. Her life was not perfect, no one's life is, but it was genuinely hers. It had texture and depth and joy in it that she created for herself. Now imagine meeting a woman who has placed the entirety of her emotional well-being in the basket of romantic love, whose sense of purpose, whose happiness, whose identity hinges on whether or not she is in a relationship, who, the moment she begins dating someone, rearranges her entire world around him. The first woman is exciting to be with because she brings something to the table that is already rich and full. The second woman, despite her good intentions, creates a quiet pressure that most men find suffocating, because when your happiness depends on him, his freedom and authenticity are compromised. He can't just be a person anymore. He has to be your salvation, and that is an enormous weight for anyone to carry. Now here is where it gets important for older women specifically. So many women in this age group have spent decades prioritizing everyone else's lives over their own. Children, partners, aging parents, career obligations. And when those seasons shift, when the children are grown, when a marriage ends, when the career quiets down, many women find themselves facing a terrifying emptiness. A life that used to be so full now feels hollow, and they turn to romantic relationships to fill that hollow. This is human, this is understandable, but it is also, if left unexamined, one of the most self-defeating patterns in love. The women who are in the 1% are the ones who faced that emptiness and chose to build something inside of it. They picked up the hobby they abandoned years ago. They deepened their friendships. They traveled, or they volunteered, or they started a business, or they took a class in something they'd always been curious about. They built a life that they genuinely loved living. And then they brought that life into a relationship with them. And what a man feels when he meets a woman like that is not intimidation. It is inspiration. It is the sense that being with her will add to his life, not consume it. That is irresistible. Thing number 4, she communicates without games, without walls, and without chaos. If I could identify one single pattern that destroys more potential connections between older women and good men than anything else, it would be this: the replacement of direct, honest communication with either emotional games, emotional walls, or emotional chaos. Let me explain each of these because they are 3 very different expressions of the same underlying wound. Emotional games look like this. She is upset, but says she's fine. She waits a certain number of hours before responding to a message, so she doesn't seem too available. She gives him the silent treatment to see if he'll chase. She drops hints instead of stating her needs. She tests him by creating situations where he can either prove or fail to prove his feelings. These games are usually taught directly or indirectly by culture, by other women, by decades of watching romantic manipulation modeled as normal behavior. And while they might create short-term drama and excitement, they are corrosive to real intimacy. A mature man, the kind worth having, will not play games indefinitely. He will simply leave. Emotional walls look completely different. The woman with emotional walls is pleasant, functional, and totally shut down. She has been hurt too many times to risk full openness, so she has built an elaborate fortress around her heart. She is warm enough to attract men, but closed enough to ensure no one can truly reach her. She talks about deep things in an abstract, intellectual way, but the moment real vulnerability is required, she deflects, changes the subject, or retreats into competence and practicality. The wall feels like safety, but it creates loneliness, because you cannot be truly loved if you cannot be truly seen. Emotional chaos is the 3rd pattern. This is the woman who has a great deal of unprocessed pain, from past relationships, from childhood wounds, from accumulated disappointments, and that pain leaks into every interaction. She overreacts to small things. She reads threats into neutral behavior. She swings between intensity and withdrawal. She connects powerfully and then, overwhelmed by that connection, pushes it away. Men who are emotionally healthy find this exhausting, not because they lack compassion, but because they cannot build stable ground with someone whose emotional landscape is constantly shifting. Now here is what the 1% do differently. They communicate clearly, directly, and warmly. If they are bothered by something, they say so, without drama, without passive aggression, without turning it into a test. If they need something, they ask for it, without apologizing for having needs, or wrapping the request in so many qualifications that the man can't even understand what he's being asked. If they are not comfortable with something, they express it, kindly but firmly, without making the other person feel like a criminal for having unknowingly crossed a line. This kind of communication, honest, direct, emotionally regulated, is incredibly rare, and to a man who has experienced its opposite, it feels like breathing fresh air for the first time in years. Thing number 5, she respects his emotional experience without trying to fix or dismiss it. Here is something that many women don't realize, and when they understand it, it genuinely changes the way they relate to men. Men have a deep, the often unspoken need to feel that their emotional experience is respected. not analyzed, not fixed, not minimized, and not made into a referendum on how they should be feeling differently. Our culture has done men a tremendous disservice by teaching them that emotional expression is weakness. Most men over 40 grew up in environments where they were explicitly or implicitly told to suppress, ignore, or push through difficult emotions. And as a result, when a man does allow himself to be emotionally open, when he expresses frustration or sadness or fear or uncertainty, he is extraordinarily vulnerable in that moment. He has stepped outside the armor that the world told him to wear. And what he needs in that moment more than anything is to feel safe. What he doesn't need, though it often comes from a place of love and genuine care, is a woman who immediately jumps into problem-solving mode, who asks questions designed to redirect him toward a solution, who offers perspective in a way that subtly implies his feelings are disproportionate, who makes it about her own similar experience before he has finished expressing his, or who becomes so distressed by his distress that he now has to manage her reaction on top of his own feelings. The women in the 1% understand something profound about men. They understand that most of the time, when a man shares something difficult, he is not asking to be saved. He is asking to be heard. He is asking for the simple, extraordinary gift of someone sitting with him in his experience without trying to change it. And the women who can do this, who can hear a man express pain or confusion or frustration without immediately trying to fix it or interpret it or make it mean something about the relationship, are women that men want to stay close to, because emotional safety is the foundation of everything. Without it, there is no real intimacy. With it, everything is possible. This requires a kind of stillness that is honestly difficult to cultivate. It requires resisting the urge to respond immediately. It requires trusting that your presence, not your advice, not your solutions, not your perfectly crafted perspective, is enough. It requires believing that a man's difficult emotions are not a problem to be solved, but an experience to be witnessed. The women who have learned this are invaluable to the men who are lucky enough to know them. Thing number 6, she makes him feel genuinely admired, not managed. There is a subtle but devastating pattern that develops in many long-term relationships, and it follows many women into new relationships without them even realizing it. It is the pattern of relating to a man primarily through the lens of what he needs to do differently, of seeing him more clearly through his shortcomings than his strengths, of offering more correction than celebration, of managing his behavior gently, lovingly, with the very best of intentions, instead of genuinely admiring who he already is. This pattern often begins innocently. A woman has been in relationships where she had to compensate for a man's emotional immaturity, his irresponsibility, his unavailability, and over time, she developed a kind of vigilant attention to male behavior, scanning for what's wrong, preparing for what might go wrong, attempting to guide and shape things in the right direction before they go off the rails. This is adaptive. It was a survival strategy in a difficult relationship, but when it is carried into a new relationship with a genuinely good man, it poisons the well. Because here is what men, all men, but especially mature men who have done some work on themselves, crave more than almost anything else in a romantic relationship. They crave feeling genuinely admired, not flattered, not managed through strategic compliments designed to encourage better behavior. Genuinely admired, seen for who they actually are in their full complexity and valued for it. Appreciated for the specific, particular things they bring, not as a category of man, not as a performance review, but as an individual human being whose qualities are worth recognizing. When a woman can look at a man and say, not because she's playing a game, not because a dating coach told her to compliment him, but because she actually means it. when she can say to him in words or in the way she looks at him, "I see what you are and I like what I see." Something shifts in him. Something relaxes, something opens. He leans in. He wants to be better, not because he has been told to be better, but because she makes him feel like the best version of himself is already visible to her. That is one of the most powerful things a woman can do in a relationship. The 1% of women who have mastered this have done something important. They have worked through their accumulated pain and disappointment well enough that they can walk into a new connection without projecting the failures of the past onto the man in front of them. They have cleaned their lens, so to speak. And through that clean lens, they are able to see and genuinely celebrate what is actually there, rather than what their wounds have conditioned them to look for. Thing number 7, she understands the power of mystery and doesn't give everything away at once. In an age of radical oversharing, mystery has become one of the rarest and most attractive qualities a person can have. And I want to be very careful here because I am not talking about playing games, withholding information manipulatively, or creating artificial suspense. I am talking about something much more organic and much more profound. I am talking about depth. I am talking about the quality of being a person who cannot be fully known in a single conversation, a single date, or even a single month. One of the mistakes that many older women make, again, completely understandably, given where they are in life, is moving too quickly into total transparency. They are done with the games of youth. They have no interest in pretending. They know what they want and who they are, and they are going to lay all of that on the table immediately because they have no time to waste. And while the impulse here is genuinely admirable, the desire for authenticity, the refusal to perform, the execution often works against them. Because there is a difference between authenticity and total disclosure. Authenticity means what you share is true. It does not mean you must share everything immediately. There is a natural unfolding that healthy connection requires. There is a rhythm of revealing, a little more each time, layer by layer, creating the experience for the other person that there is always something more to discover, always another dimension to explore, always a new facet of this fascinating person waiting to be found. When a woman reveals everything in the first few conversations, her complete romantic history, every insecurity, every wound, every fear, every expectation, she short-circuits this natural unfolding. She turns what could be a long and wonderful journey of discovery into a quick transaction. And the man, having received all the information at once, has nowhere left to go. The curiosity that drives sustained attraction has nowhere to grow. The women in the 1% share generously, but they share gradually. They are warm and open without being an open book. They give enough to create connection and enough space to sustain curiosity. They understand that a relationship is not a deposition, where the goal is to get all the facts on the table as quickly as possible. A relationship is an adventure, and the best adventures are ones where you never quite know what you're going to discover next. Thing number 8, she leads with warmth before she leads with strength. This is perhaps the most nuanced point in the entire video, and I want to be careful to explain it precisely, because it is very easy to misunderstand, and the misunderstanding could cause real harm. There is an enormous amount of messaging in contemporary culture telling women, older women in particular, to lead with strength, to be independent, to not need anything from anyone, to project confidence and capability as the primary face they show the world. And while strength, independence, and capability are genuinely wonderful qualities, there is a way in which women have been encouraged to weaponize these qualities as a kind of protective armor, to lead with toughness because vulnerability has cost them too much, to project invulnerability because being soft got them hurt. to announce their strength before anyone has a chance to question it. And here is the subtle but significant problem. Strength without warmth reads to most men, and honestly, to most people, as unavailability, as a signal that says, I don't need you. I don't want anything from you. Keep your distance. And while that signal might protect a woman from being hurt, it also prevents her from being loved, because love requires closeness, and closeness requires warmth. The 1% of women who have truly cracked the code here have understood something essential. They don't lead with strength or with vulnerability. They lead with warmth, with genuine, uncalculated human warmth, the kind that makes a man feel welcome rather than evaluated, the kind that makes him feel at ease rather than on trial. And from that foundation of warmth, their strength emerges naturally, not as a warning or a shield, but as something genuinely beautiful. He gets to see, over time, that she is both soft and strong, both open and boundaried, both in need of him and perfectly capable without him. And that combination, warmth and strength together in balance, is something that very few women have mastered, and that men find absolutely extraordinary when they encounter it. Thing number 9, she knows how to receive, not just give. If I asked you right now to think of every woman you know who is deeply comfortable receiving compliments, receiving help, receiving love, receiving gifts, receiving care, receiving attention, how many names would come to mind? Probably not many, because for most women, especially older women who have spent decades in the role of caregiver, nurturer, and emotional sustainer, receiving has become genuinely uncomfortable. It triggers feelings of unworthiness, of debt, of vulnerability, of not knowing what to do when the generosity is flowing toward you rather than through you. Many women deflect compliments with self-deprecation. Many women refuse help because accepting it feels like admitting weakness. Many women minimize the care they're offered because receiving it fully would require them to believe they deserve it. And that belief has been eroded over years of being treated as if they don't. And many women give endlessly, generously, beautifully, sometimes self-sacrificially, because giving feels safe and known, while receiving feels terrifying and strange. Here is why this matters in attraction. When a man gives to a woman, when he offers a compliment, when he does something thoughtful, when he extends himself in some way to show her that she matters to him, and she deflects it, minimizes it, or turns it into an opportunity to give something back immediately, he receives a very clear message. The message is, my offerings are not welcome here. My care doesn't land. And over time, most men will stop offering, not out of cruelty, but out of the simple exhaustion of giving into a void. The women in the 1% have done the internal work of learning to receive graciously. When someone compliments them, they say thank you, simply warmly, without qualification. When someone offers help, they accept it, without immediately calculating how to repay the debt. When a man shows them tenderness, they let it touch them. They don't rush past it, they don't deflect it, they receive it. And in that receiving, something extraordinary happens. The man feels seen in his giving, which makes him want to give more. A beautiful, generous cycle is created, and it all begins with one woman's willingness to believe she is worth receiving. And thing number 10, she has done the work on herself, and it shows everything we've talked about in this video. The identity clarity, the presence, the rich life, the direct communication, the emotional respect, the genuine admiration, the mystery, the warmth, the ability to receive. None of it is possible without this final foundational thing. None of it is sustainable without it. And it is this. She has done the internal work. She has looked honestly at her wounds, her patterns, her defenses, and her contributions to the relational outcomes she has experienced. And she has done something about it. This is the hardest thing on this entire list, because it requires something that our culture does not reward and that most of us desperately want to avoid. It requires radical honesty. Not the kind of honesty that points outward, not the kind where you get really clear on how he was wrong, how he failed, how he let you down, how men in general are damaged. The kind of honesty that points inward. The kind where you ask yourself, with genuine courage and genuine willingness to be uncomfortable, what have I brought to the table that has contributed to the patterns in my love life? Where have my fears been running the show? What defenses have I built that were once necessary and are now keeping me from the love I want? What story am I still telling about love that may be keeping that story from changing? Women who have done this work carry themselves differently. There is a quality to them that is immediately palpable, a groundedness, a peace, a sense of self-knowledge that has been earned through real inner labor. They are not perfect. They are not done growing. They will tell you that clearly, because one of the signatures of genuine inner work is knowing how much there is still to learn. But they have cleared enough of the internal debris that they are actually available for real love. They are not walking into new relationships dragging 10 unprocessed relationships behind them. They are not asking a new man to pay the debt of every man who came before. They are present, they are clear, they are ready. And men, especially men who have done their own work, the kind of men worth choosing, can feel this from the first conversation. They can feel the difference between a woman who knows herself and a woman who is still searching, between a woman who is available for love and a woman who wants love but is unconsciously blocking it at every turn, between a woman who has met her own depths and a woman who is afraid of them. The 1% are the women who did the work, not perfectly, not without falling apart in the process, not without setbacks and reversals and long, hard nights, but they did it. They chose again and again the harder and more honest path, and the love that has found them or is in the process of finding them is love of an entirely different caliber than anything they experienced before. We have covered a lot of ground today. 10 things, deep things, real things, things that I hope have landed somewhere true inside of you. And I want to end this video by saying something that I mean with every part of myself. It is not too late for you, not in your 40s, not in your 50s, not in your 60s or beyond. The love you are looking for is not something that expired when you weren't paying attention. It is not something reserved for younger women or simpler situations. It is available to you, but it requires you to show up differently than you may have before. It requires you to be the 1%. And based on the fact that you have watched this video all the way to the end, I genuinely believe you are already on your way there. Now here is what I need from you before you go anywhere. If this video gave you something, a new thought, a moment of recognition, a shift in perspective, even just one idea you want to carry with you, please like this video right now. That one tap tells us that this work matters and it helps this video reach the women who need it most. Please share this video. Put it in a message to your friend, your sister, your daughter, the woman in your life who is navigating love and deserves to know these things. You might change someone's life with one simple share. And please, if you haven't already, subscribe to the Heart Code. We are here every week with content designed specifically for women like you. Women who take love seriously, who take themselves seriously, and who are committed to growing into the fullest, most beautiful version of who they are. Hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, become part of this community of women who are choosing every single day to do love differently. And if you want to go one step further, if you want to make a direct contribution to the work we do here, please use the Super Thanks button right below this video. Your support keeps this channel alive, keeps this content coming, and tells us that what we're building here matters to you. Every single Super Thanks is received with genuine gratitude from the bottom of my heart. This has been The Heart Code. I will see you in the next video. Until then, know your worth, do the work, and never stop believing in the love you deserve.